have a seat. You want to take the second chair? Thanks so much. Let's get started right away. For a quick voice ID, would you please say your name and then your character's name?
I'm Daveed Diggs. I play Mr. Brown.
Great. We have a question right here.
Hi,
Hey.
Lorenzo.
How you doing?
You told me that you've been a teacher before becoming an actor. So can you talk about what do you miss about being a teacher and how did that help you relate into this character?
Probably any teacher will tell you that you learn more from your students than you are capable of teaching them, and I think that's the thing I miss most is kids have a way of looking at the world that doesn't come with as much baggage because they haven't acquired as much baggage, and so I miss that. I miss every day being able to tap into a way of looking at the world that is fresher than my own. And I think it helped with the character by just, being able to remember what it was like to be in a classroom, trying to remember a lot of the tricks I used to use to get their attention. And Steven was really good about shooting around those ideas for me, letting me walk around the desks, do things like that maybe weren't necessarily in the script, but that really helped me be able to feel like I was back in my old classroom.
We have a question right here.
It's Christian from Germany. Good morning.
Hey.
How do you remember your own days in school? And it's part of being a good actor, also being a good teacher, also being a good actor, because you have to put on a show every day, right?
Yeah. So in school, I remember liking school mostly. I think middle school, that age that Augie is entering is like probably tough for most people. And mine was pretty tough, but I earned it. I was like a weird kid. But I think, teaching is a lot like acting. I actually think it's more like doing rap shows for me. The thing about a rap show is it's when you're performing is it's about managing energy, right? It's about understanding where your audience is and how we get them energetically to where they need to be in order to understand the music that is happening. And teaching is a lot like that. It's very sort of coming into the room and being like, okay, my students are all asleep right now. I need them to be this much awake in order to understand this lesson, but not this much awake because they'll run around and act crazy. So that's what it's closest to for me.
Hi, I'd like to ask about your name. It's a very unusual name, Daveed. Can you tell us something about it?
Well, in my case, it's Hebrew. It's a Hebrew pronunciation of David.
I came from Israel.
Yeah. So
that's why I asked.
Right, beloved, is the translation as I understand it. And my mom's Jewish. When I was born, my parents had 7 dogs, all with Hebrew names: Mezuzah, Delilah, Hamantash, and Shlomo. So I was just the next in line. And so they named me Daveed, but they spelled it with 2 E's in hopes that people wouldn't call me David, but it doesn't work.
We have a question right here. You just pass the mic over. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Christy. You mentioned that teachers usually learn from children as well. So I would like to ask what you learned on the set from the children.
Oh man, I learned everything from the kids on set. This was my first movie, so those kids were way more professional than me. So they, they sort of had to teach me everything from, what you do during a break. I had to follow them to figure out where to go. I really didn't know anything. But I think as actors, watching them, one of the things that I try to take with me that I got from them, that I take with me to other sets, is how aware they all were of the energy in between takes. So all of them, you've seen the film, right? All of them are incredibly gifted actors and really great at performing. When you call cut on a set, it's sometimes really easy for the energy to disappear in the room. And what those kids were really great at is understanding, some people are feeling a little tired. Let's play a game, or let's tell jokes, or let's make sure we're going to be here all day. Like, let's make sure that we have the energy that we need to get through the thing. And that doesn't come naturally. That's a thing that you have to that actors and directors and everybody on set has to really cultivate. And those kids were so great at that. So when I work on other sets now, I try to remember that and be really conscious of how everybody is feeling in between takes, because otherwise those days can get really long.
We have a question right back here.
Hi. I was just wondering how you find the act of, when you're on stage, presumably you can tweak your performance for every performance. You get 8 chances a week to make any corrections or alterations you want, but in a movie it's set in stone and you've moved on.
Yeah.
So how you feel about the fact that everything you've done is now immortalized and you don't get another chance? Is that a very different process
terrifying.
as an actor?
Yeah, no, I'm terrified of it. I think I'm still riding a little bit on some blissful ignorance of the process. So, but it's still kind of a foreign concept to me to do a thing and have that be it, and also to really have no control over how your story is told. Somebody else is going to put these performances together and really create the arc of this character. So the stressful part about that is that you want to make sure that you are happy as an actor with every take, because they could use any one of them. They don't have to ask me which take to use. But hopefully you are working, on this film, what I was so pleased by when I watched it was that, if you trust your collaborators, if you are working with a director that you trust, it's probably going to be all right. No one's trying to make you look bad. So, and this one, I was so pleased when I watch it. I have a hard time watching myself always, and I watched this one and didn't want to run out of the theater. So, that to me, that's a positive. That's a win.
Yeah, the teacher in the film is absolutely wonderful, has endless patience. The children react to him in the way that you would expect in a dream world. I was wondering how similar that is to your own experience, and whether, you can tell us perhaps a couple of anecdotes where now, perhaps looking back, you wish you'd done things differently, or where, you were perfect.
Yeah, I think Mr. Brown is definitely a better teacher than I was in a lot of ways. But I think, I think in the film we're seeing moments that are useful for the story and that are relatively good, but certainly there are bad days. I think you see a hint of it with that fight that happens in the hallway. Like, those are things that happen in classes. And I definitely, I remember having to, I hated to send kids out of class, but there were a couple times where it just got so out of control, and that was probably my fault. It was probably, me leading a lesson that was too wild or too just different, out of the norm for some kids to handle. I was also not a full-time, I was a workshop style teacher, so I was coming into other classrooms and teaching poetry units or teaching workshop-based stuff. So I had a little bit of an easier job, and that kids were always excited to see me because I wasn't their teacher. But even still, I think sometimes if you do something that requires a sort of different kind of structure, and maybe the class wasn't in that mode or the kids weren't ready for it, sometimes, I remember having to send a couple kids out of class, which I hated doing, because kind of one of the reasons I was there was to try to have something that was more useful for the kids who were problems, right? Because I was a lot of time working with rap music or doing stuff like that, so they could be the experts on it. And generally, those were the kids who I got to lead the class. Sometimes energy was just up too high, and I couldn't control it. And I also didn't have the other thing about not being the full-time teachers. You don't have the same kind of authority, so right? So they can always be like, "I don't have to listen to you. You're not my teacher." Well, you're right.
We have a question right here.
What was the hardest or your favorite scene that you filmed during the film?
They're both the same, and it was that breaking up the fight scene, which was so emotional, and it was very difficult. It was hard for me to watch those kids fight each other every take. That's what was hard about it. But it was also my favorite because of how they all took care of each other after the cameras turned off. I told this story to some of you guys yesterday, I think, but when every time cut was called, all of the kids, because there's a bunch of kids in that hallway, and they would all come up and sort of hug the two actors who had been fighting and be like, "Hey, that was great. it was such a good take. Oh my God. You know, just like really trying to take care of each other and make sure that everybody was okay, because it was so emotional and they were crying, you know, and it was just really wonderful to watch all of these young actors kind of take care of each other that way.
Hi, I'm Shadia. So you were a teacher, obviously, before, and obviously a teacher in the film, which you were great at. And what sort of advice would you give to teachers out there that are going through a very similar situation?
Ooh. I mean, I think, first of all, to all teachers, you are doing the greatest job in the world, so thank you. And if you are dedicated to it, thank you and keep doing it. Secondly, for me, I think you can always, in my experience, you can always try harder to meet your students where they are. That was a lesson that I had to learn over and over again, especially I think the older I get and the further I get away from where they are, the easier it is to sort of start imagining that I have the correct answer. But teaching for me was always about process. It was always about how do we get to an answer. And if you're open enough to that, maybe you can be open to the fact that maybe my process is wrong, particularly for this person. Everybody's brain works differently. So that's the thing I always tried to do, was understand that maybe this student doesn't think the same way I do. And so how can we figure out how to get to the same place if they need a different process than I would need?
We have a question right here.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned that it can be difficult to watch yourself on the screen. But what about listening? For example, if you listen Hamilton, how do you feel?
I don't listen to Hamilton because I did it too many times. But I have a hard time listening to myself too. I've always felt that way. It took me years and years to get over the sound of my voice. But it's one of those things that you do. You go in the studio all the time, and it's necessary as part of the job. I have to listen back to the takes that I do and choose the ones that are good. So, but I've always had kind of a fear of the sound of my voice. Like when I record an answering machine message or something, I hate it. It's the worst thing.
We have time for one last question right here.
Hi, it's me again. Speaking of Hamilton, how would you describe how this phenomenal success has changed your life and your career?
Well, you wouldn't be talking to me if I hadn't done that show. You know, I wouldn't have been in Wonder. I basically get to do all of the same things I did before Hamilton, but now people watch me do them, which is kind of cool. And I make a lot more money doing it, which is also kind of cool. So I don't know, but it's been an interesting ride, and I am skeptical about it. I don't know how long it will last, and so because of that, I think it also makes me treat kind of every opportunity as precious. So I am working a lot right now and trying to do all of the things while people still care what I have to say.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Daveed. We'll start our next press conference in a couple of minutes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.